I woke up at 3 AM to start the GMTK Jam and the theme was roll of the dice. At this point my brain just kind of exploded, and so I decided to just put some stuff together and see what would happen. Now, for some reason I really wanted to make a game about mice, because mice rhymes with dice, and to me at 3 in the morning this was the funniest thing I have ever thought of. So for the next 6 hours of the day I played around with this idea where you play as a mouse with a gun. And that was the whole idea, and I didn't get very far with it. This is the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam. It's all about creativity and innovation, and I don't entirely know where this project was going, but it definitely wasn't anything groundbreaking. So here's the plan. You're a little mouse and you can push dice around. When they roll over, they'll display a different number at the top, meaning that however you move the dice will determine whether you get a 1, a 4, or a 6, and I felt like this could lead to some really cool puzzle mechanics, sort of like Bubba Is You but with extra steps. I really love Bubba Is You, and even though I haven't completed many of the levels because brain is small, I was really excited to make a puzzle game. I've never done that before, so it would be a super fun challenge. The first thing I did was take care of the basic movement and rolling mechanics, and what you see here took way longer than what it should have. Seriously, I spent so much time on this. I think I gained a whole bunch of wisdom just from aging and getting what is it called? Age wisdom? Life experience. Not age wisdom, life experience, yes. It was really important to me that the dice in the game would actually correspond to a 3D cube in real life, so it would be realistic, and when you roll the dice around in the game, it makes sense. Now, because I was using Unity and it's a very good game engine with no flaws, I could actually simulate a cube at the same time that the game ran. There is definitely a better way of doing this, I don't know them, but this worked well enough for me. Although, like I said, this took a lot of time to link up. I had scripts managing the rotation of the cube and which number was displayed on the dice, and yeah, this mechanic just took so long to put together. Next, I added some collision detection so you weren't able to push dice through each other or through walls, basic puzzle stuff, otherwise I would have been making the new hit game Mice Rolling Dice Simulator TM. I'm sure there's an audience for that somewhere. This was working fine at the moment, but for someone that just starts up the game, they would probably have much confusion of what's actually going on. So I added these little indicators to the side of each die so you can see which numbers you'll end up rolling to. Alright, so that's all the basic stuff out of the way, and I wish it didn't take this long. I spent the entire morning making a janky platformer thing, and then spent the next 8 hours making this, which does not look very impressive, and that's because it's not. So it's time to add some actual gameplay. Now, I love maths, I'm a very exciting person like that, and since I'm making a puzzle game, I thought I could combine these two together. The plan was to push dice around into the slots of equations. The trick is that you have to insert the dice in such a way that they solve the maths correctly. So if you had this sort of setup, you'd have to roll the dice to this tile here and have it say 3, because 4 plus 3 equals 7, or at least so I've been told. I thought this was a pretty fun and unique mechanic, but I was quickly running out of time and I had to get my booty moving. To test if this would actually work, I made a little calculator script which would add any two values and spit out the answer. This isn't exactly, whoa, but it's always good to test stuff and think about it beforehand before committing a bunch of time to it. After all of this tedious work, I felt very drained. It was around 9 o'clock at this point, I had been working for almost the entire day, and doing a lot of programming just really tires me out. So I decided to take a break from coding and make a start on the music. I hopped into FL Studio, threw a bass and piano together and made a very funky basic beat. I also joined a team for this jam. Nate Dev crawled through my window and said, "Do you want to be in a team?" And I was like, and he said, "Okay, you're making the music." Nate Dev and AIA did the programming and art together. Go check out the project, it's very cool, link in the description. I spent the rest of the night putting together the music for the game as well as my teams, and I found this to be a pretty good way to relax. Coding is fun and all, but it takes a lot of brain power. For me at least, I like to just fumble and bumble my way through making music and have fun with it. I went to bed at around 12 AM, woke up at 5 and had a very sudden realization that the game did not look good. Day 2 started with me drawing some very basic animations for the rolling dice, and then using some position and scaling tweens to make the rolling mechanic feel juicier and more polished. And hey, look, I am no Pablo Picasso, please laugh, that was very funny, but I think this looks somewhat okay. Sure, it's a bit childish with the hand-drawn aesthetics and the very frame-by-framey animation, but I think it just adds to the charm of the project. When you look at my character stats, art is definitely one of the lowest. So many of my games use basic geometric shapes, which we all know I love, but it was nice to do something different for a change. Okay, so I'm 30 hours into the jam and I have a mouse that can push dice. As exciting as this may be, we only have the game aspect of a puzzle game. We need some darn puzzles up in this very strange looking thing. I don't know where I was going with that. I really started to feel the pressure of the game jam set in at this point, and I may have forgotten to record a time lapse for making these, but cut me some slack, I was going a little bit insane. The first couple levels are pretty basic, they just teach you the main mechanics and how to play. Then they slowly ramp up in difficulty, and I did my best to make the levels that were challenging enough to keep you interested, but not too hard that you would give up and smash your computer monitor out of rage. I spent many hours designing these levels, and by the time I got to about level 10, something definitely switched in my head. The whole game up to this point was basic addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Now I decided to introduce some algebra. It wasn't anything super complex, I'm not some sort of massive educational corporation in disguise trying to trick young children into learning more maths. Well, not yet anyway. But I thought to myself, anyone who would play a game about mice and dice for this long would surely have some basic knowledge in maths and/or programming and/or algebra and/or numbers to some extent. And so I added a trig function, and then to top it off I did a very simple quadratic. I could have been a lot meaner, but this seems like a good stopping point. Puzzles, yes. Music, yes. Sound effects, not yes. I spent the next hour bashing my elbow into a table and tapping glasses, which definitely didn't spill a bunch of water onto my laptop, to make a whole heap of sound effects. I used some of these for my project, but I sent most of them over to NewtDev and AAAA to use in Peace Combat. Okay, hear me out. Just listen to this dice rolling sound. Is that not the most satisfying frickin' thing in the entire world? I made the sound by tapping my knuckles against a table, and it works really well. I don't know, I just found this interesting and kinda cool. Now let's take a moment to think about all of the things that we've learned along the way. Number 1. Think about your ideas before you start making them, otherwise you will be in a constant state of pain for the rest of the game jam. Number 2. Understand how basic geometry works before coding a die rolling system, because it's really hard to make it work if your brain is small like mine. Number 3. Always pet your cat. Always. And finally, number 4. Game jams are fun, they're short, and they're great ways to experience new ideas. My entry isn't even near perfect. It has a lot of weaknesses, and I wish I could go back and manage my time a bit better. I would have loved to add an undo button and maybe some better UI, and maybe I'll come back to this project at some point to polish it up. I think this game mechanic could be used for some really cool stuff, and I have so many ideas floating around in my head to complete this game, but I sort of need to finish my current Steam project before I look into anything else. Thank you so much for watching, and shout out to my patrons, especially DerpyDino35, Devon Rosenthal, Jacob, and Trash Taku.